Get started. So welcome everybody to our online career panel event. Welcome to all of our attendees. My name is Lauriann. I am the founder of Lauriann STEM Club. We deliver STEM outreach within the London borough of Bexley, and we also host external online workshops and events as well. Hence today's event, which is the International Women's in Engineering Day career panel. So welcome to our online career panel. Today is International Women's in Engineering Day, and we're really excited for you to join us for today's event and today's session in celebrating that. Today is a day that we celebrate the contributions of women in engineering across the globe and internationally. I myself am a woman in engineering. I'm a full-time civil engineer, and then I also run Lauriann STEM Club, which is a social enterprise based and operating within the London borough of Bexley. So I'm so excited for today's career panel event. Really great event and a great way to celebrate women and their achievements within the engineering sector and engineering industry. We have a fantastic career panel today, ranging from women across different sectors within the engineering industry and women studying different engineering courses at university. We have a variety of panelists from university backgrounds who are currently students at university, students doing their industry placements at the moment. We also have industry professionals here on the call today, part of our panel, who are starting out in early careers, may have a few years experience in the industry, to more experienced engineering professionals as well. So I think this session is going to be very insightful for other females and young girls, also in particular students at the moment who are currently studying some STEM subjects and really want to understand more about engineering, what career opportunities are there for you in engineering, and also the career pathways as well, and how to actually pursue a career in engineering, what that actually looks like, what different engineering jobs entail. So I'm sure these amazing, inspiring females here today on the panel will be able to give you as much information and insight about their background experiences, also about their role and how they actually got into the position that they are in today. So we have here are the few of the panelists here, but we will introduce them to you shortly, very shortly. Our panel Q&A sessions will be hosted by a member of the Lauriann STEM Club team, which is Sanskriti, who will be your host, hosting these Q&A panels, and I will hand it over to Sanskriti very shortly. And you can see we have a wide variety of panelists on the call today, to really get an insight into their backgrounds and what they do, and to shed a little light into their own contributions that they're making right now within the engineering sector. I just want to mention if all panelists can have their webcams turned on during their panel segments, and also the audience as well. You are more than welcome to utilize the chat function during this career panel Q&A, because we want it to be as interactive as possible. If you do have a question during the Q&A sessions, then feel free to type it in the chat, because we will be able to get to any audience questions at the end of each segment, where there'll be an opportunity to actually have the audience, that we can ask the questions to the panelists on behalf of yourselves if you just pop it in the chat as we go along. And also there will be an opportunity, if you do want to, you can at a specified time unmute your microphone to then ask a question to any one of the panelists during the specified time at the end of each segment. There will be opportunity at the very end. We've had some attendees pre-submit their own questions as well. So there will be an opportunity in the final segment at the end for dedicated audience questions, where again, you'll be able to ask any other overall questions that you may want to ask to the panelists at the very end, where we'll be also asking the panelists questions that were submitted by the attendees when they were registering to sign up for this event. So just make sure while we do conduct the Q&As that everybody is muted apart from the panelists, of course, and then that will just make for a smooth Q&A. But without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Sanskriti, who will start with the Q&A panel segment number 1, and then we'll lead on to panel segment number 2. Panel segment number 1 will consist of university students, and then panel segment number 2 will consist of industry professionals. So I'll take it away, Sanskriti. I'll just start sharing my screen, and then I'll hand it over to you. Thank you very much, and enjoy the session.
Hi, so just before I start the segment, does everyone from panel 1 would like to introduce themselves?
I don't mind going first. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi everyone, I'm Solace. I am an engineering management student at the University of Greenwich. I just finished my degree last week. I'm going on to do my master's in engineering innovation and entrepreneurship in September at UCL. I presently work as an innovation engineer intern at Thames Water.
Hi, can you hear me okay, everyone? Hi everyone, my name's Marion. I studied electrical electronic engineering at Loughborough University. I finished my 5 years degree there. So I did my bachelor's, my undergrad, an internship at Siemens in the fire sector. And then I finished my master's, my integrated master's as well. Yes, I'm a graduate in tech consultancy in the test automation field. So lovely to meet you all today.
Okay, so I'll start with the Q&A then. So you guys have already discussed about the courses you're in, but how do you find campus life? Like, how's the commute? How's university in general?
I'm happy to kind of go first and answer that. So at Loughborough University, I'm not sure if anyone has been or visited. So everything is very campus based. It's not a city university. Everything that you need is on campus. So first year, everyone kind of lives in a bubble in a way. So there's a engineering side. So you get involved with not just electrical engineering, but you can also mix with mechanical, automotive, civil engineers. So you learn a little bit about each other's discipline in terms of like the social aspects, because everyone is kind of located in one place. You all kind of visit each other's dorms, and it is a very like a nice balance of, okay, you're there to study, but you're also there to like socialize and have fun. It's almost like a home away from a home, because you'll spend time together. You all start out at the same place, and then as your years go by as well, you're able to meet other people outside of your degree into like say psychology, history, like different disciplines, but also network. Like the union is great. Like it's an amazing uni, lots of sports as well, lots to get involved with. So it's very fun. So that's like my experience there at Loughborough.
I don't mind going next. With at Greenwich, I would say it's very student-based as well. We have 3 campuses spread around, which is good because then you get to in your campus, you get to have like specialized people. So, everyone in my campus is doing STEM. And if I go to another campus, to keep that unity. So in third year, we'll work together to create amazing projects.
It sounds like you guys are having a lot of fun at uni. Do you recommend placements, a placement year during your studies?
So I did a placement year. I did a placement 1 year placement, which was like a sandwich course. So you took a year out to do a 12-month placement, and then you continued your degree. Also, luckily had the opportunity to do a summer placement as well, so a bit of a balance. So you sort of spend your summer kind of like on holiday, you spend it working and internship. Duration kind of varies, depends who you do it with. I highly recommend doing a placement if you get the opportunity to. If you don't, it's absolutely fine. Like towards the end, as a graduate, as I having a placement, not having a placement, it won't put you at disadvantage at all if you can't secure one. But just having that experience in the middle of your degree, it just helps you navigate and decide what you want to do at the end. So where I managed to get a placement in the fire sector, I learned a lot about the application for it. I managed to apply some bits of my degree to it as well. But then it helped me decide, okay, do I want to go down this route of like specializing in fire building services? It just helps you branch out a lot more. What you find is that when you do your degree, you have a lot of opportunity as well, like after what you can apply it to, what you can do with it. It just helps you navigate around. And also, I think with placement, if you're doing a placement with other people as well from other universities or apprentices as well, it's a nice like little network. You can get to meet a lot of people that way as well outside of your university, because I suppose going forward in your career, you are just going to like network as well. You're going to meet people from all like disciplines, backgrounds, everything. It just eases you into that working life a little bit better. And I personally, I had a very good experience. I really enjoyed it, so I highly recommend it and found that it really helped. So that's my like perspective on it. So I would recommend it.
I would say for me, same with what Miriam said. A placement is very important. I didn't do a year placement. I did 2 summer placements. And if you can get a summer placement, I would say do the summer placement. If you can get a year placement, do a year placement. But the key is to be as open, because some people are always very set on doing a summer placement and don't apply for year-long placements. I feel like you should apply to anything and everything, especially in your second and first year. You should be going for anything and everything. This might hurt as well, but like also look at stuff that you would not get paid for, because the key is to have that experience. As much as you say it's all about the degree and everything and what when you get to the real world, graduate programs or just your first career, they're gonna want that little 6 months, little 1 year that you've worked. And it doesn't also have to be engineering. Like I always say, it doesn't have to be like I must get an engineering placement. Look at other stuff that you're interested in. I had a friend who she couldn't get an engineering one, so she did like a marketing one, and she still got into an engineering graduate program in a top company. So it's really just looking for that experience. The world is changing now, and like people are looking for soft skills a lot. So yeah, it's really key to just make sure you get your foot in through the door. Even if you can't get a placement, send some messages, some emails, ask for a little bit of mentoring. That's also very key. Yeah.
Wow, that sounds really good. You talked about soft skills. What kind of soft skills? Can you just explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so soft skills are just basically, I like to say they're skills that the average competent employee should have. So this should be, communication, time management, leadership skills, skills where you don't necessarily have certification for or, go to classes for, but you learn this on the job. If you're a waitress, you know how to juggle things. Would I use the term? You work well under pressure, stuff like that. If you are a call operator, you're good in communication. You're good in when things go bad, and you know how to comport yourself. And it could even just be you're just in university and you're in a project with in a group, and you stepped up, you took leadership to ensure your work is done. That is also a way of showing leadership. That's a soft skill where you don't necessarily like set out to learn them. You kind of just learn them on the job.
Thank you so much. So this is another question. What were your favorite classes in school? Which ones do you think are the most useful and helped you prepare to where you are now?
So I think like growing up, my favorite classes were maths. Like I loved it. It's very like problem solving. There's lots you can do with numbers, right? That's what like I really enjoyed. Looking at what I'm doing at the moment, I feel like that's really helped alongside physics as well. For like some of my friends on the same degree, like maths wasn't their strongest, but they enjoyed like the problem solving aspect of it. They enjoyed like kind of figuring things out. They enjoyed the challenge. So if you're not good at maths but you know it's something you want to do, it's not necessarily going to like stop you from doing it. I just felt like it helped me kind of like navigate towards like getting into engineering, just because I enjoy numbers. It's like very numbers based. But for some people who like I'm kind of like working with on the other end, like they're not from backgrounds like maths and they can still do the same thing. So that was like my favorite subject, and that kind of helped me bridge into what I'm doing at the moment with like your problem solving skills too. Yeah, the combination of both just helps.
I would say same. My favorite was math and further math. So yeah, but like said, you don't have to be like amazing at it. You don't have to, it's really all about the fundamentals. You know, there are skills you learn while solving maths, except from solving the actual question itself. And I think that's just what propelled me to the engineering. And yeah, it's just even if it wasn't I think further math wasn't even my best performing subject, but I knew I liked the fundamentals of it. I liked wanting to solve a problem so bad. And yeah, I just stuck with it. I also really loved physics. I like to joke that it was the only science I was good at. I did not do well in biology at all. So I stuck with it, and the same thing, it's kind of like maths, but there's more of an analysis with it. And yeah, really liked it.
Okay, thank you. So that was all from the Q&A. That was all from the Q&A that we had prepared. So if there's any questions from the audience, can you just type it into the chat and I'll read them out?
Well, yeah, if feel free to what Sanskrit said, type anything into the chat if you do have any questions for the panelists. I've got a question myself actually. Um, do you feel that you need to study a STEM subject in school in order to be on the course that you're in at the moment? Is it compulsory? Do you think it's very important, or do you think there's other kind of subjects that could still lead into your course?
Um, yeah, I'm happy to give a go at answering that. That's a very good question to kind of see if like your STEM subjects at school, almost like your fundamentals, if they channel into like your degree and what you're doing in say a graduate scheme or in your career. I think it helps just to understand like the fundamentals, the basics of what you need to what you're applying it to, and maybe say how like I study further maths and maths at A level. That just helped during my degree during first year to be able to apply this to electrical engineering. However, saying that there were people on my course who didn't do maths and like further maths, or even physics. I didn't study physics myself, I actually did biology. So again, like physics would have helped, but it doesn't necessarily put you at a disadvantage, just because I think with first year, it gets everyone up to the same speed of what you really need to know. I just feel like having experience in those subjects, even if you're not good at them, just experiencing them gives you a little bit of like a flavour of what it could entail. It doesn't necessarily mean you can't do it or you won't be able to have a go at it in future. Like it doesn't close those doors. So to kind of like run off that question and answer it, it helps. But as someone who didn't do like the STEM subjects myself in A level, I just feel like it helps, but it doesn't mean that you can't go on to progress into a STEM career.
Yeah, I think I would come with the same. Seems not really. You don't have to do a STEM. It does help if you do one of them. However, it's not compulsory. I always try to tell people at minimum, maybe do maths. At least you don't have to do further math. That's not compulsory. And just have a passion for it. It's definitely good to be knowledgeable on other STEM as well. Just enough to get you out the door, get you answering questions in class. Yeah. And for my degree, I would say I did definitely see the impact in, especially in first year, just the basic math you learn at A level, you do bring it back here again. It was such a weird thing. Even a bit of further math as well that I learned, I did definitely see it in my first year. My first year as well, I think we had one of our modules where we did engineering principles, and it was basically just a ton of like physics that we've done. Obviously, they did like go over it again, I remember my lecturer saying, some of you might have studied this, some of you might not have, but that's okay, we're going to go through it again. So here we are, all in first year university, learning energy again, doing labs on these. And I am grateful I learned physics then, because I was able to grasp things quite easily because I've done this before. Yeah.
Okay, we have a few more questions from the chat. What advice do you have for students applying for graduate schemes?
I'm happy to kind of like go first. So advice I would say for those applying for graduate schemes, it just helps to firstly like look through the criteria and see if that's a role you want to do. And what I find is that those who apply for like graduate schemes, kind of being on one and looking back at it now, you can definitely distinguish between those who are like more passionate about it than those who aren't. They look for more your skills, or like how enthusiastic are you about doing this role? Is this like the fit for you as a company, the fit for you as well? You consider what you're looking for in that graduate scheme, because what they want is like people to come in like leave out. Of course, you're more than welcome to do that, to experience it. If it's not for you, that's absolutely fine, but know what you want to get out of it as well. Like maybe put some goals in place, like where you want to be in 5 years time. For example, I put some goals that I want support towards like my chartership. I want to be able to achieve maybe like a bit of experience in project management and a soft skill in my like test automation, so they know this is what you would like to achieve, this is what you're working towards. Another piece of advice, I suppose, is I think when you're applying, I know like the application process is very long. It can be a little bit like tedious, but they all tend to cross over a little bit. So where you have like your situation judgment, or like for some of them, you have to do a lot of like data work, a lot of graph work. There's so much resources out there. some people actually reached out to me on LinkedIn where I did a placement before at Siemens. So like, you know, can you tell us more about your experience, what it was like? So that was quite nice. Maybe if you see some people that you may know, alumni, there's like some Loughborough alumni at the company that I was applying to, maybe give it a go. Maybe like constant message, but a message here and there. If you find like their role fits what you want to do, you can even reach out and ask them about their experience. And then thirdly, I find a lot of places they have values and principles they go by. So if you look up like the company's values and what they're working towards, what their goals are, then you can use that, tailor that into your answers or any kind of like video interview you're doing. I think that really helps you stand out too, because it shows you research the company, you know what you're doing, you know what you're working towards. And that's my like piece of advice I give for those applying for a graduate scheme.
Yeah, I support everything. Yeah, I think Madame says it's very important to know a lot about the company. I always also say with that as well, try and know one or two projects that are currently going on in the company. That's always key. A bunch of my interviews that I've had, the key ones that I've gotten, maybe they've asked me, oh, do you know about this project on the A12? Especially I don't really know roads. I was like, okay, yeah, I know a little bit about this. It's really important to have that. I remember, I'll never forget, I was having an interview with Kiers, and this was somewhere down north, and I remember quickly he was like, oh, A28. I literally was on ChatGPT on the side, and I was like, projecting A28. And if I'd known more about that, I probably wouldn't have had to do that. I did get the role because I was fast, but yeah, it's really important to know projects. But another thing I would also say is before you apply, definitely try and get a referral always. I'm the person that will stalk a bunch of people on LinkedIn just so I can get a referral. Just ask them. It doesn't like it comes off weird. I never forget asking someone like, how can I do this without seeming like a stalker? But you're gonna have to just deal with it. You're gonna have to go out of your comfort zone. I'm a bit of a shy person, and I had to be like, oh, would you mind like having a little coffee chat just to, know about the role? And then there's that awkward part where you have to be like, oh, actually, would you mind like referring me? Start as early as possible. Some people think, the faster they can do an application, the faster it's done, but no, it's really quality over quantity. Target them. Sometimes what I like to do, if I know I'm targeting for this company, I remember when I was in second year, I was targeting for this company, I would start like connecting with the hiring managers immediately so that by then, like, they already have a bit of me, they've seen some posts I've done. I would like send a little cute message. Thank you for connecting. I'm looking at this, I'm interested in this. Check some managers that you would like to work on their team as well. So there's that personal aspect is really not all about how well you've done or things you've done. Sometimes that personal aspect gives you a bit of an edge, and it's also really good if you have alumni as well.
Okay, we'll have one more question. How is the split between individual and group work during uni?
So at the beginning of my degree, I found it as very individual work. There wasn't a lot of group work, maybe like work in pairs or some coursework, but I found a lot of it to be very like individual. Like you have exams, you have your own kind of coursework, you have your own material to go through. Towards the end, especially towards masters, you have an individual project that you have to deliver on. Again, it's very like your supervisor, and maybe you might work with someone who's also doing the same kind of project. And there was a group task which held like a lot more credits in my degree, where you had to work in a team. The application was to like build a network. So it was more individual work towards the beginning in the first few years, and then it was more group work towards the end. I just found that like all the stuff you did in your individual pieces, you can then kind of apply it to your group pieces at the end. Yeah, so I think for my degree it's more individual and then eventually more group work.
Mine was a bit of the opposite. So we started with more group work and ended up with less group work. But I would say most of it, we say the 50-50 split, some courses, maybe 40% of the work would be a group work task, and then the 60% would be individual. I saw more of that, but I'll say in general, first year you get a bit more group work. It doesn't mean you're submitting as a group. They just put you together. You know, they're trying to help you make friends. They're trying to help you connect and like network with other people. And then third year, by then they expect you to hopefully have great connections. And if you are putting group work, you're kind of sorting that out yourself as to what group you're in. So I guess it varies from degree to degree and from university to university.
I'd also add to that as well. I think what helps is you have like a syllabus for your university. So you have a spec of what you'll be doing in each year. You can see what modules you want to choose, and you can see how much group work is within that as well. So they usually hold up more credits for group work sometimes. Or like, for example, where we just said like our degrees were a little bit different when you have individual group work. So it's best to like look at their syllabus, look at what you'll be studying or currently are, and see how much group work, how much time you'll be dedicated towards group work within that.
Okay, thanks. Is there any more questions that anyone wants to ask? Okay, I think that's it for the questions for this section. Thank you guys so much. We'll start the next segment. Can the panelists from segment 2 introduce themselves?
Shall I start? So I'm Laura Baker. I've been working in the steel industry for too long, 25 years. And I studied a million years ago material science and engineering, which is a less known engineering field, which is all about how materials are made. So the atomic structures and stuff of materials and how you make alloys, etc. So I focused on metals, so I'm a metallurgist, and then focused more on steel, and how you make different types of steel. So I've risen through the ranks throughout my career from an entry level role up to studying my doctorate, and now I'm a senior manager who's responsible for all of the products in the UK, and a team of around 35 engineers that work for me, in developing the steels that the customers need, in the UK. So we might talk a bit more about that later.
I'm happy to go next. Hello, my name is Samreen. I work at PepsiCo, but I guess to start from the beginning, I have a master's degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Surrey, where I did a placement year with PepsiCo. I also did a study abroad year in Singapore at Nanyang Technological University. I graduated last summer, so just coming up to a year now, and I went straight back to PepsiCo working. I'll tell you my role title, it probably won't make sense, but as the UK Lean Six Sigma subject matter expert, basically what I do day to day, look at in our factories, so PepsiCo, they make your Walker's crisps, your Pepsi the drink, Quaker Oats. So we've got manufacturing factories. Day to day is in those factories, how can we improve efficiency? How can we make our equipment run better? That's one side of my job. The other side is more of a sustainability perspective. How can we ensure that the company is reaching our sustainability goals? So lovely to meet you all.
Can everyone hear me okay, first of all? God, it's a new mic, just making sure. So I'm Chloe, I'm 20 years old. I'm a second year civil engineering apprentice with BAM Nuttall. So I'm working all the way up north in West Yorkshire. We're doing a massive rail upgrade on the Transpennine, which has been really fun. But yeah, I came to this straight out of college and I've been there for 2 years now, just going on. But yeah, nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you. So what is it like being a female in your role?
Well, if I start, so yeah, I mean, 25 years ago it was quite different to now, which is a good thing. Um, I would say being a woman in particularly in a male-dominated environment, which engineering still is, you definitely get noticed, and that can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on how you feel about it. But I think, for me, it's been a good thing. It certainly is one of the reasons that I had quite a rapid progression through the company. Obviously, I had to be good at my job, but because I was in a minority, um, people remembered my name when they might not necessarily have remembered the man who was doing an equally good job. So in that case, there's a kind of reverse um, psychology, if you like, to being in the minority. So that's been an advantage. Of course, the flip side of that is that you are pretty much under the spotlight all the time, which can be quite demanding. Certainly my experience, and it's a positive one again, is that I've ended up being a bit of a role model for youngsters coming through, which I love, but it also does mean that you are in the spotlight, and you've got to kind of keep fighting the good fight, as it were, every day. So there's yin and yang to everything, good things and bad things, but generally I would say it's been a positive experience.
I guess I'll go next if that's okay. Completely agree with Laura. Like I said, I've only had 1 year in industry being a graduate and then 1 year being a student when I was a placement student. I think there is also an element that it depends on what company you work in and what their ethos is. So I'm quite fortunate that PepsiCo is very focused on creating that gender balance to the point where they're looking to, I think it's something like implement 50% of management role being female by 2025. So completely agree, from a management perspective, being a female is almost an advantage. So I'm quite lucky to say I've never had a gender bias from a management perspective. I work in a factory environment, so from a shop floor perspective, with some of the engineers on the line, can be slightly different. But I think one piece of advice, I guess, if you ever come to that, is I think a lot of the bias isn't intentional. So I've been on the factory floor and then been called things like love, and that might be seen as a bit of discrimination. And personally, I don't like that. So I think if you come across that sort of behavior, just make your boundaries really clear, because they probably aren't doing it to intentionally discriminate or intentionally point out that you're a female. So I think as long as you set up those boundaries and just be clear what you think is acceptable, then that really sets a good path moving forwards. But I think it's gotten a lot better in the workplace. So definitely less of an issue in terms of being discriminated in a negative sense for being a female. Perfect.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the previous two about being noticed. Working on site, there's about 40 of us on my site, and I'm the only woman. And being the only woman, being small and having green hair, you can't really get away with doing much wrong on site because you do definitely stand out. But again, about the previous comment about being called things like love, again, I think you are right in saying that guys don't mean it in like a derogatory way. And I mean, it's just about your own boundaries. Like you say, post it bothers you. It doesn't bother me quite as much. But if there's anything that is said to you, you do kind of have to step up and set your own boundaries in that sense. Because I've personally never experienced anything malicious, definitely not. I think my biggest insecurity is more so about being quite young and inexperienced rather than being a woman. But I definitely do agree. Some men just aren't used to talking to women at work. So that is just something that you do have to keep in mind. Again, as I just said, I've never had anything seriously bad, but it definitely is worth just standing your own ground, because I think sometimes you can feel like you're kicking up a bit of a fuss. Say, for example, with the love thing, you could just say, would you mind not calling me that? And you can sometimes worry that you're being a bit dramatic, but you aren't. It's about you being comfortable at work, and everyone does deserve to have a nice environment to work in. And that's obviously what we're all trying to strive towards. So, yeah.
Okay, thanks. What skills and or talents do you need to do well at your job?
shall I go again? So I mean, when I first started in my career, obviously my engineering skills were the things that I was employed for. But I think around that, and I think somebody mentioned it in the first session, you always need things like problem solving skills, project management skills, organizational skills, and really critically communication skills. And then I think certainly in my experience, as I've sort of risen through the management ranks, less as a doer to a leader, those softer skills become more important, and actually your engineering skills less important. It's still very good to have them, because I'm managing engineers now, and I need to be able to talk that language, and I need to be able to ask the right questions and guide them and coach them to do their work. But actually, it's those other skills, those other professional skills like communication, organization, etc., that are more and more important, and of course, people leadership as well. I mean, the other thing I think that is really important, and less of a skill, but something that you just develop over time, is credibility. People need to know that they can trust that what you're saying is correct. So that's something that is really important to build up as you go through your career.
I fully agree with everything Laura just said. And to take it a step further, I guess, I applied to quite a few graduate schemes just to sort of identify what's out there. Is there something I'm missing from my placement? And the thing that surprised me the most during the interviews was they were less keen on understanding, do I know how to calculate stresses on a specific beam scenario? Because that's already ticked off. You've done your degree, so they know that you're capable because you have a degree in it. So just like Laura was saying, it really is those soft skills which are important, and less those skills. But I've listed just in my notes here a couple of character traits which I've found are really important. So I'll give you an example. I interviewed at a design house, and I got the role, and I said, well, what's CAD software do you use? And so I can do some prep and learn how to use it. And they said, don't worry, leave everything you've learned in terms of softwares behind. We're going to teach you everything from scratch because we want you to do it in a certain way. So what was really important in that scenario was being curious and being willing to do that learning, in some cases relearning, and also accepting that when you're learning, you might not always succeed at your first hurdle. You might have to then go to a second hurdle or a third hurdle. So along with curiosity, I think perseverance and determination is really important. So I've found quite often in my career, short-lived though I know it is, the mistakes I make, I wouldn't call them mistakes, I'd call them learning opportunities. But what I learn from those not succeeding at the first hurdle is so much more than what I learn when I do succeed at the first hurdle. So yeah, curiosity and that perseverance I think is really important.
Yeah, I think I'm just bouncing off everything we've said before, but it definitely is those soft skills that you need. I am absolutely atrocious at maths. I did a BTEC in college, so I just did like a general construction one. I've never liked maths. While I'm doing my degree now, I'm not very good at it still. So obviously, I've noticed a lot of the lovely ladies on this call are very good at maths, but that is a good skill to have. But your more academic skills, I think a lot of people, especially younger people, tend to play those up in their minds. They aren't as important as these soft skills that we've mentioned. One thing that I personally find in my job, because I work in civils, I'm out on site every single day pretty much. The main thing that I found that was important was a willingness to learn, because when you're an apprentice on site, you're literally fresh out of college, you don't have a clue what you're doing. There are a lot of senior engineers and you're not going to have any idea what they're talking about. So having that willingness to learn is really important. Like I must have bugged my site engineers so much because I was just asking them question after question all the time. But that is how you learn. And another thing is your time management, which I think is a skill that can be difficult to develop, but it is invaluable because, again, working on site as a civil engineer, especially working in rail, which is notoriously busy, you learn to kind of prioritize your own tasks because now I've been in the job for 2 years, I'm starting to get a little bit more responsibility. But it is really important that you can balance that, because I could have, say, 5 jobs in a day, and it's up to me to kind of assign an order to those, get those important ones done first, and then go on from there. And I think the final thing is just communication, as we've mentioned. In my job, especially, like I said, is rail is so busy, it's awful sometimes. But you will often find yourself, especially if you've got, say, senior management who don't really know you and your skills, they'll ask you to go and do things that you're not qualified to do, or you just don't know how to do. And obviously that is, again, your responsibility to communicate with them and tell them, I can't do that, I'm not willing to do that, I don't feel confident doing that. So yeah, just getting those good people skills just to be able to talk to people is really, really invaluable. And I think that is definitely the most important one out of all of them.
Yeah, it does sound like everyone needs to be good at communicating in their jobs. Um, so what are the biggest challenges you have faced in this position?
I'd let one of the others go first this time so that I don't say everything.
Do you want to go first, Chloe? Then we can reverse the order.
Yeah, I might as well go first. I think this is the only one that I haven't prepped for as well. I think my biggest challenge that I faced in my role, because when I first came into it, I thought, as I mentioned before, I thought my biggest issue was going to be being a woman. I thought, nobody's going to listen to me, everyone's going to laugh at me, but I luckily didn't find that. But I think my biggest issue is really my inexperience when I first started, because I'm going to contradict myself here, because I've just mentioned how important communication is. But when I first came into this job at 18, I was not particularly good at communicating. I was good at interviews, but actually talking to people day to day, I was quite bad at. And it was just such a huge amount to learn in a short amount of time. And I did really struggle with that at first, because at the time, I wasn't the kind of person who liked asking questions, who liked to ask for help. So I think just balancing all of that was very, very difficult for me. And also, something that you can find when you're working, unfortunately, is like you won't always get on with some of your colleagues. Um, and I had a little bit of a hard time at first, because I just wasn't getting on with this particular site team. And it was nothing against them, we just didn't particularly mesh well as people. And I did find that really difficult. And I wasn't going to stay in engineering because I was having such a hard time. I thought, oh, this job isn't for me. And then I spoke to one of our senior management. I just said, nothing against them, I just don't feel comfortable with this team. And I got moved about 4 months into my job, and I absolutely loved it. Absolutely love engineering now. So I think definitely the biggest challenge for me was standing my ground and knowing what I need, because obviously navigating a new job, it's difficult to tell if you just don't like engineering or if it's like external factors like that. So yeah, I honestly wish I had said something a lot sooner, because I would have had a lot easier time at the start. But yeah, that was my biggest issue, especially being young, is just standing your ground and saying what you want. So yeah.
And similarly to Chloe, I think my biggest struggle was when I first started. Again, that sense of not really understanding the processes in the factory, not having that experience to be able to quickly, I guess, accelerate in your projects. And I think it was most difficult because you come out of final year from university where you feel on top of the world. You've just done your dissertation. Mine was in a really technical subject. I felt like I was leading the research field of wind energy. And then I get into a factory and I'm asked to increase the efficiency of this packaging line. I'm like, where do I start? I've never seen these bits of equipment before. I don't know any of the control methods. Where are the manuals? Can someone talk me through how it works? And I am very eager to learn, but I'm also very eager to get results quickly. So I think the biggest struggle for me initially was not appreciating that sometimes your development journey takes a long time and you can't do it all in one go. So I think the first week I must have gone through about 20 different manuals to try and learn as much as I could really quickly. But what I've learned with hindsight now is that you're always learning, and you can't rush that process. And I think anyone can tell you who's working in any industry right now is that even if they've had 20 years of experience versus 1 year of experience, there's always more that you can learn. So obviously you can't learn everything in one moment. So that was my biggest challenge, but it's just coming to that realization inside of yourself, I guess, that learning does take time, and that's okay. Enjoy the journey, don't try and rush it. My second biggest challenge is I run a lot of projects across the UK, and that means I lead a lot of project meetings. And I guess similarly to Chloe, this is where the sort of imposter syndrome comes in due to age. Because within my meetings, it's got people who have worked for the company for maybe 15 or 20 years, and I'm there leading the session, asking them to do this, this, and this, and then questioning some of the things they're saying. So a big challenge at first was facilitation, but I think my key advice to how you go about sort of leading those meetings with people in the room who have more experience, just be confident in yourself. And when you have an opinion, if someone questions it, and this is just generally good practice, I think it's always good to have some sort of justification ready. So I'll give an example here. I'm currently working on a project where site has presented one solution, and I've reached out to a couple of people across the UK, a couple of people in the global team, and I've said, what are your thoughts on this? Because I appreciate I'm not the expert. And they've come back and said, we're not sure this is such a good idea, but site is very, very adamant they want to do it. So I've gone and I've collected data. So now when I go and say, I don't think you should do this, I have some sort of justification backing me. And I find that that really helps when I facilitate that decision making, having that justification. And I guess that preparation if people do ask questions. I think that's everything from me. Thank you.
I wish I'd been as wise as you two when I was your age, to be honest, because yeah, a lot of the things that you're talking about, I struggled with until quite recently. So, but yeah, I think learning is a really key thing. And yeah, like I said, I've been in the industry for 25 years, and I'm still learning about steel every single day and about business every single day. And I wouldn't have it any other way, because it gets really boring if you know it all. So yeah, don't think that you're going to know everything on day one. You won't. But I think the other thing I'll really emphasize that's already been said is asking people around you. I think when you first join a company, you kind of think that you're expected to know all the answers. You're not, and there are people around you who will know things. They won't necessarily know better than you, but by putting all the pieces of the jigsaw together, you can come up with a good picture. So I think those challenges when you first start in any kind of company, that you think you need to know everything and that you don't want to ask for help, I think are pretty universal. Also remember that you're the expert of you. Nobody knows what you know because nobody else is you. So whilst you might not have all the technical information, nobody else is going to see it from your perspective. So you are the expert in the room. So and you've been hired for those qualities. So yeah, imposter syndrome is a nasty one, but you've got to fight it every day.
Okay. What level of education, training, or certifications are required for the type of roles you are in?
I can start off this time. So I work in PepsiCo, again, bit of a strange role. In terms of degrees, they're looking for an engineering background. Chemical engineering actually suits process manufacturing better than mechanical engineering. But I come from a mechanical engineering background, so they love it, and they give me lots of packaging projects because there's lots of mechanical elements. So some sort of engineering degree doesn't necessarily have to be a master's. I have a master's because I want to become chartered, so that just supports with that. Other education and training, I think it's quite role specific, and in my case at least, it's you start with some sort of degree and then they'll give you the training you. So I've become a specialist in Lean Six Sigma, which, to put it bluntly, is a process improvement methodology. But then they send me on that training, so they support the development. Within my role, I do a lot of coaching. of other people who are running projects. And again, they've sent me on coaching training to give me that qualification. So I guess to just be able to apply for the role, it's just some sort of engineering degree, and any other skills or training you need, they'll support when you begin.
I guess, yeah. So in my area, I mean, my team have got a real broad range of skills and qualifications, to be honest. I mean, there's a lot of, in the product development area, that they're mostly sort of metallurgists, material scientists, engineers. But, there's a lot of other aspects to product, like, supply chain management, finance, marketing, commercial, sales, etc. So there's really, in my team, there's practically any skill, and some of them have come through the apprentice route, some of them have come through the sort of degree graduate route, others have just got sort of on the job skills and experience and life skills. So it really does depend what type of field you're in. As we've already heard, some are very specifically engineering focused, others are a bit broader, like mine, where it's more about a holistic business skill, if you like, which is pretty accessible to all sorts of backgrounds.
I think mine's a tiny bit different because I am an active apprentice right now. I don't think I quite explained at the start, but mine is a 5-year apprenticeship, and you'll end up with a bachelor's degree. So it's open to anyone from 18 years old. So I literally got straight in there out of year 13 at college. But the really good thing about doing an apprenticeship that I found is you're, shoved straight into the industry. So I've had 2 years experience, but for this particular scheme that I'm on, the only requirement that you need to have is having a level 3. It doesn't have to be a construction BTEC, which is what I did. It doesn't have to be, maths and science A levels. It's pretty much open to everyone as long as you have done that level 3 course, which I really liked. But so yeah, you can just come into it as long as you have passed something at college and you do well in your interview. That's all you need, really, because obviously with this apprenticeship, you are given that training on the job anyway. So there isn't too much of a focus on having a relevant degree beforehand, because we are all working towards our bachelor's degrees anyway. So that is one of what I find is like really good benefit of having an apprenticeship, because it's pretty much open to everyone.
Yeah, it's nice to hear that there are different routes to get to the positions you all are in. What is your typical day like at work?
Shall I start? I don't really have a typical day. It's yeah, I always start the day thinking I know what I'm going to do, and then it never quite pans out that way. So but the type of things, I mean, I spend a lot of time in meetings. I guess that's pretty much common across business. But those meetings might be anything from, team meetings to check in on, how the team are doing, project meetings to progress various activities that we've got on. Could be with, the senior directors of the organisation to update them on what we're doing. They're all sorts of meetings. But the things I really love doing are when I'm out and about. So I might be out on the factory floor, which, if you've ever been to a steelworks, they're pretty big. Our place is 10 square miles, so you need to drive around quite a lot. And I love it. I still love being out there looking at the massive engineering in a steelworks and the sound of it and the smell of it, and it just gives me a buzz every single time. I also really love working with customers, so I spend as much time as I can with the customers of our products, and I particularly like working with the automotive sector and watching the cars being made. That's pretty impressive. But equally, I might be out and about representing the company at various events, working with government, working with the local government councils, etc. Talking about various things that we're up to, or I might be traveling. So we've got sites all around the country, like a lot of the other companies that are represented here today. So I might be traveling around different sites, working with my teams in different areas of the country and seeing what they're up to. So yeah, there's no typical day really. It's but every day is a school day. Every day is a learning day.
I can jump in. So very similarly, my day-to-day is never the same each day. So I am actually out-based because I have a central role, so I'm not tied to a specific site. So I think I'm meant to spend half my time working from home and half of it traveling, spending slightly more time traveling at the moment. But day to day really depends on what projects I have going on at that point in time. But quite often I'm in the factories. I usually have projects related to a specific set of equipment. So it's reviewing that equipment, trying to understand how it works at the beginning phase of a project, and speaking to operators in the area, getting their opinion. And if we have an efficiency issue, why do we have it? They're the people who are there in the process. So what do you see? That's the initial phase of a project. And then if we're thinking about then going into improvement and analyze, it's having in-person meetings with my project team. And then actually implementing some solutions, which involves quite often speaking to the manufacturer of the equipment. On the flip side, I'm working on a solar project at the moment, so it's speaking to potential vendors for the project. I also do a lot of coaching for people on their project, so about maybe 10% of my time is on Zoom calls, just getting updates on their project, helping where I can, giving advice on how they can overcome some hurdles. And then the other maybe 30% of my time is doing my own training. And so I mentioned briefly earlier, but I am working towards becoming a chartered engineer. And so it's making sure I'm ticking off those experiences, doing my reports where needed. But really, I can't give a summary of what a day-to-day looks like because it really changes based on what project I'm working on and where I am in terms of sites. And so I go all the way from Scotland to I think Reading. That's where we span just in the UK. But I have had to go to PepsiCo's a global company, so I've had to spend some time in Athens before as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going to bounce off of that what you said about being a chartered engineer. So obviously, if any of you don't know, there's certain grades you can have as like a professional in engineering. Because I'm still in the first part of my apprenticeship, I'm working towards my Eng Tech, which is the first of the three. So that a lot of my day at the moment is taken up by that because I've got a deadline in 2 weeks to submit it. So most of my day's been doing that at the moment. But again, as both of you have said, it really does vary. Obviously, because I work in rail, there is a lot to do. It is a lot of busy days. You get a lot of weekend work as well, night shifts, which is great because I love getting more pay. But it really does depend because I work in a team of around 6 engineers on a construction site, so there are quite a lot of us. And there's so many different things I can be doing. I can be setting out, doing some surveying because we've got a few things going on. So we're upgrading a train station platform. We're doing a lot of other things. Could be setting out a bridge. I could be scanning for services. There's a lot of things to do, and you definitely get a lot of experience with this technology, which is fantastic. Equipment like the total station, GPS, using AutoCAD, which I do not like and I avoid when I can. But yeah, and another thing I do is obviously because I'm here today, I do a lot of work as a STEM ambassador, or I try to. Because the Trans-Pennine Route upgrade does span from Manchester to York up north, it is quite disruptive work. So we tend to go to schools and colleges just to kind of teach the children and like teenagers about what we're doing, tell them about the roles that you can do when they're a little bit older, the routes into that job. So yeah, my time is split between site work and doing a lot of STEM volunteering, which can be quite difficult to balance. But my advantage is because I'm still young and I'm still an apprentice engineer, I don't have quite as much responsibility as some of the others. So that is a really good advantage for me because I can spend a lot more time doing the fun stuff like STEM volunteering rather than doing all the site work. So yeah, that's something I'm enjoying right now.
Oh, well, it sounds like you guys have a lot going on in a typical day. Um, so that was the last question. If the audience members have any questions, just write into the chat. I'll read them out.
Okay, I have a question for the panelists while there's questions are going into the chat. Did you always know you was going to be in the role you're in today? Or did you kind of have another profession like when you were younger that you wanted to go in? Did you always know from like a young age this is where you was going to be, or was there like a change in course as you kind of grew up?
I don't mind starting. So I did mention before, I'm not a maths person, I'm not a physics person. I don't really know why I picked engineering, to be honest. But back in school, I did actually want to be a writer because I am a very kind of artistic person. I like writing, I like painting, I paint my own clothes, I do all sorts of stuff. Um, when I speak to people about what I do, they say, "Oh, were you a art student? Are you a fashion student?" I'm like, no, engineering. So yeah, that's what I wanted to do. I want to go down that route. But then when I was in year 9, so I must have been about 13, 14, my school did a scheme. It's called Go Higher West Yorkshire. It's a thing up north that we have. It's kind of getting students into industries like this. And it was a construction workshop for a couple of months. And then I just got really into construction. Then I thought, oh, what job can I do? I wanted to be an interior designer. And then I looked into that and I thought, oh, maybe not. So I literally just went on the Go Construct website. I looked up some jobs. I saw civil engineering. I thought it sounded cool. And I just researched it some more. Then I realized, oh, when I realized what it actually was, because I think I went 6 months without actually knowing, I could not tell you what civil engineering was. I knew it was something to do with buildings, but I had no idea. So then when I learned more about how it's, massive infrastructure like airports, rail, etc., I just thought, oh, that does sound really interesting. And then, yeah, I just went from there, applied to college. And then I think when I got into college, I felt a little bit better because I realized I didn't have to be fantastic at maths to do the job. So, yeah, I went from wanting to be an author to doing this. So, yeah, it's a pretty big jump, to be honest.
I can jump in. So similar to Chloe, I actually wanted to be a poet in year 7. Maybe this is a theme in engineers, I'm not sure. But then during GCSEs, I just really fell in love with maths and physics. Not enough to be an engineer yet, but I did apply for, you may not know it, but there's something called an Arkwright Scholarship, which is an engineering scholarship for high school students. And I did get it. And through that scholarship, you get insights into various different fields of engineering, and you go to sort of internships, mini internship days. And from there, and by getting that experience with the scholarship, I realized that engineering was really what I wanted to do, just because I thrive in environments where I have to problem solve, and the answer isn't obvious at first. So initially poetry, then I enjoyed physics and maths, then got the scholarship, and that really directed me towards engineering. So I've known from quite a young age, I'd say.
Yeah, I guess similarly, I think I've always been interested in science and maths and those types of subjects, and I've always been really curious about how things work. Um, so yeah, I remember one day when you guys won't remember them, but there used to be things called videotapes and video players. And we had a nice shiny new one in our house, which I took apart, much to my parents' disgust, to find out how it worked. And I've always been a bit like that. I've always been curious about how things work. So yeah, and then once I'd gone to university to study engineering, I just got the bug then, and it was like, yeah, well, this is what I want to do, because you get to play with lots of big machines and stuff, and just basically muck about making stuff better. So yeah, I guess it was always on the cards really that I was going to be an engineer.
Okay. Um, there's one question. Do you think you can switch between engineering sectors if you don't really enjoy the sector you're in, or like in both work and in uni?
I can jump in and start this off. I think it's probably university dependent, but for me at least, at the University of Surrey, first year was combined if you were mechanical, aero, or auto. So we all had the same lectures and followed the same module pattern. So you could change, just not when you're in second year. So you have up till the end of first year to decide which modules do you like. Are you in the right discipline? So I had one friend who started off as mechanical. She really disliked the fluid mechanics and aerodynamic modules. So then she swapped over to biomedical. So that's also involved. So it's aero, auto, bio, and mechanical, at least at the University of Surrey. So I think it's probably university specific. From a work perspective, like I mentioned previously, I come from a mechanical engineering background, but my role isn't specific to mechanical engineering. It's more of a project management, I guess, where you bring in your engineering insights. But it's probably more suited to chemical engineers. So I've been learning a lot about process engineering. I spend a lot of time looking at different control systems. So I've learned a lot about from an electrical engineering perspective. So I think depending on your role, a lot of them aren't, unless you're going into a design house where they're asking you to do beam calculations, a lot of roles aren't fixed on a specific discipline of engineering. It's just having that engineering background, because if you have that willingness to learn, if you have that ability to problem solve, which is evident from having an engineering degree, then quite often you can fit into any general engineering role.
Yeah, you definitely
I
right with
totally
that.
agree with. Oh, sorry, Chloe. No, you go. You go.
No, sorry. I was just gonna say, I agree with you with both the study and the work aspects, because obviously as an apprentice, it's very similar to what you said about your first year of uni. So this particular apprenticeship scheme that I'm on, so there is quite a few, but the one that I'm on runs annually. So you all apply at once and you all get hired at once. So there's a civil engineering one. You can be a quantity surveyor or a project manager, but you do have the option to switch, because all of these courses that we do, they are very, very broad. With the engineering one, you can go to pretty much any other aspect of engineering. But so, for example, in my second year, we had a new student who'd started as a quantity surveyor for the first year, and then he got to switch over. Because the good thing about this apprenticeship is for the first year, all of the modules that the students learn are the same, so you can pretty much freely switch between them. It's a little more difficult in your second year, but you can still do it, because, like I said, the apprenticeships that we do are very broad. You will learn a lot of things. Like, for example, if you look at professional people, you can see geotechnical engineers, you can see structural engineers. Me, I am just a civils engineer for now. If I want to specialise later on, I can. So there is a lot of freedom for me. But then when you come into the job side of it, like the professional side, if I say I'm not an apprentice, say I've finished, I have a lot of freedom to switch. So as a civil engineer, there's a lot of things that you can go into. Say on site, I do a lot of quality paperwork. I help out with that side. So if I wanted to, I could quite easily make the switch to being a quality engineer, or I could make the switch to being an environmental engineer. There are a lot of ways for you to switch. Because I think personally in my role, you're always going to do tasks that are kind of outside of your job description. Again, a civil engineer doesn't strictly have to do the quality paperwork, but that is something that we all do, and that just gives you lots of experience in different sectors. So yeah, working in engineering, the experience that you are getting and the skills that you're getting are definitely going to help you if you do decide to change. You're definitely not locked into a role. There is always the option to move around. Yeah, I'll let you finish now, Laura.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I think I'd say the same. I mean, I do a lot of work with universities, and I think more so now than ever, the courses are quite generic, at least in the early years. So you have lots of opportunity to kind of get a flavour for different types of engineering, and then maybe specialise in later years. But that kind of broad engineering mindset, really, of curiosity, of problem solving, all those things that have already been mentioned, really stand you in good stead for doing an awful lot of different jobs. I mean, whether it's switching from one type of engineering to another, which, as we've already heard, is really very easy to do, or even going into other roles. I mean, in my career, I've had roles in supply chain management, for example, in logistics, and you don't automatically think you need engineering skills for that, but there's all about problem solving. It's all about kind of making things as efficient as possible. It's very much an engineering skill. I've had colleagues who've gone into finance and accounting, for example, so because they're very similar. The bases of those roles are very similar. So I think if you're interested in science, maths, etc., engineering is a really great foundation mindset to have, which can then take you on to all sorts of other things. So yeah, I think it's a very flexible career path to choose.
I just have a quick build on that. So I think it's very important when you're doing interviews, especially for grad schemes or for your career, ask the question of, do you have the opportunity to try maybe different departments, do a taster day or support in other fields of work? Because the role I'm in right now, it's very flexible. I've said I want to work on sustainability projects, and they've been happy to do that because I made sure that that was agreed when I signed the contract. However, there was another role at a design house that I also had been offered, and I really actually wanted to pick that. That had always been my dream. But then when I was asking about personal development and opportunity to sort of try different areas, sort of be able to guide what work you're doing, and the answer was no. So I think it's really important in that interview stage, understand if they're willing to let you explore. For me, I'm really happy I'm getting some insight into electrical engineering, into process engineering. If you want to do that, if you want to grow your skills cross-discipline, see if that's a possibility when you interview.
Okay, so we were sent in questions before the event. I'll just start reading those. Is it difficult working in an industry dominated by men?
So no, as I said earlier, you get noticed, but culturally, it can be a challenge. Certainly the steel industry is still quite macho, so you can get dragged into that macho culture if you're not careful, which isn't that, well, some women are very happy being like that, and that's fine. It's not for me. I don't really want to be macho. So yeah, you can get dragged into that. So it can be quite hard to be yourself in that sort of environment. But it's also a lot of fun. It's an awful lot of fun. So again, there's good and bad to everything.
I agree. Just set your boundaries. I think it is getting better and better. And if there is something you're uncomfortable with, then speak up. There's nothing wrong with speaking up. It's actually better that you speak up. It will drive that improvement for the future.
Yeah, I remember. I'm gonna completely botch the quote here, but there's a woman who's a little bit older than me. She's one of our security heads in the company, but she said something like, I'm gonna get this wrong. She said something along the lines of, "It's a man's world, but you don't have to act like one." And she's basically just saying, you are surrounded by men, but I do like to do my makeup, my hair, and look nice every day. That's just something that I feel good doing. And a lot of the guys will be like, oh, why are you doing your makeup? You at work? I'm like, I just want to look nice. Like, just because you are surrounded by men, you don't have to act like one if you don't want to. And it can be difficult because I had a very good friend who was a senior engineer, and she was the only woman I worked with. And then she left for Canada last year, and I was absolutely heartbroken because I have other friends at work, but it is just nice to have another woman to talk to, because I think I've always just meshed a little bit better with women anyway. So yeah, that was a real shame because it's just something you have to kind of expect. There are, at least at the present moment, there are going to be a lot more men. But I definitely wouldn't say it's difficult. It's just something that you get used to. And I mean, because I went to a construction college beforehand, so I was used to that environment anyway. I was the only girl in my classes for the first year, so it wasn't really a shock to me. So it's definitely not, it doesn't hinder you as Laura's mentioned before, it does get you noticed. I mean, when I was applying for my apprenticeship, we had some group interviews, and I don't know what this says about us, but every girl that I saw in the interviews got a place. So I don't know if that just means we're all fantastic, or, you know, it does give you a slight advantage, which is good because I feel like we should use that where we can. So yeah, it definitely isn't. It isn't difficult working with a lot of men. It's just something that you have to get used to, and it can take a little bit of adjusting sometimes.
Is it possible to rise to a higher position as a woman in engineering?
Yes. So my role is well, we call it a senior leader role. I'm one of the most senior women in the organization, and probably the most senior female engineer in the organization. So yeah, it is possible. It I wouldn't say it's more difficult. I think because of all the things we talked about before, you get noticed, and if you're good, I mean, obviously you have to be good, but if you're good, then you can get quite a rapid rise. I think the problem is that because there are less women entering in engineering, then the numbers who are making it up to the top are obviously fewer than men. So you still do see, certainly in most companies, I think, fewer women in senior roles, but I think that's less about any kind of discrimination and more about the fact that there's just not enough women coming in to engineering in the first place. And if we had the same amount of women coming in as we do men, we'd have the same amount of senior women as we do men. I'll stop there because this is one of my soapbox topics, so I'll prevent myself from going off on a tangent.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I definitely think there's opportunity for females to get those senior positions in this field of STEM. Just as an example, one of the site leaders for one of the PepsiCo sites is a female. And she didn't even come from an engineering background. She started off as a receptionist and she worked her way up. So I really don't think being a female is a disadvantage. Yeah, I think that's all that to really be said on that.
Yeah, that's definitely right. Than what we were saying. I mean, on my site, she's left now, but we had an agent who's like a kind of senior engineer. She's a woman, obviously, but she is very well known in our company. She does a lot of extracurriculars. She's a STEM ambassador. You can tell she's very young, but you can tell she's going to go very far in the company. But she's just lovely, and I think she was one of the first people I met on my first day, and I was just to see like a senior engineer as a woman. I was like, oh, nice, that'll be me someday. But yeah, I think Laura's point is definitely right. It's not the fact that women aren't capable of advancing. It's just the fact that there's an imbalance. You're naturally going to see more men in leadership positions. But yeah, I mean, I'm personally working towards one someday, and hopefully, the fact that I saw that woman as an agent, hopefully, maybe one day when I'm a bit higher up, I might make another, young girl feel the same way, which would be really nice. So yeah, I think it's just baby steps really, just getting more and more. But there's definitely nothing stopping you from progressing. I think probably everyone is working towards that eventually.
So do you get treated differently or are underestimated by coworkers?
Not anymore. I think I think when you first start in any kind of role, whether you're a man or a woman, I think you've got to get that credibility, as I said earlier, and that it doesn't matter what your gender is. Until you've got that credibility, you're going to struggle to have as much impact as you could potentially have. So I don't, in my experience, that doesn't really matter what gender that you are. You've just got to establish that credibility.
I agree, and I think in my experience there hasn't been any
Well, you've gone on to mute.
sorry about that. There hasn't been any bias based on a gender perspective. Potentially there's been a bias due to age, but I think the more I've grown in the company, I've actually realized that that bias is something I've put on myself. So we mentioned imposter syndrome, but in my own mind, I've been thinking I'm in a position where I'm leading all these people who are much older in much more senior positions, and I've actually brought that doubt in just by myself. It's nothing that no one else has put onto me. So I think quite often where I think there might be a bias, there's something internal that I'm thinking that's driving it. So generally, I haven't experienced any bias due to gender.
Yeah, you're definitely right with the age thing. I think we've both mentioned that. That is the only thing that I've really struggled with, is being a lot younger and more inexperienced. I mean, I did my SMSTS course. It's like a senior health and safety management course, and I was the youngest person there by about 20 years, I think. That was a little bit jarring. But yeah, I personally haven't experienced anything. I mean, I'm going to be honest, sometimes I think you are treated sometimes differently as a woman still. I mean, there could be a group of lads and they could be swearing, and then they'll see me and they'll go, "Oh, sorry." And I'll be like, "It's fine." But I think one good thing I have noticed is, as an engineer, you're usually carrying an awful lot of heavy equipment, and a lot of the time I'll get some help carrying it, which is lovely. I don't usually have to ask, which is always a nice little benefit. I think you take the benefits where you can get them sometimes. But yeah, honestly, I've never experienced anything negative. And I think I always wondered if it was just my company and their policy, but obviously, like you saying the same thing, that is a good sign that times are changing in engineering, and it's, not really tolerated anymore, which is fantastic. So yeah, nothing bad from me in that regard.
That's good to hear. How do I get engineering experience as a teen?
Say that again, Sam. I didn't quite catch it.
Sorry, I'll just repeat that. How do I get engineering experience as a teen?
Sorry, did you say as a teenager?
Yeah.
Okay. I can start off here. So I mentioned previously, but there's something called the Arkwright Scholarship, and you apply for it, I think, when you're doing your GCSEs around that time, and they partner you up with a partnering company. So they have things like lots of companies in the automotive industry, lots of design houses, and you're linked to them, and they organize different insight days, maybe short sort of internships that you can go to. Generally, the Arkwright Scholarship, they'll run events where you can network with people working in the industry. So for me, that was a great way to get an insight into engineering and sort of get my foot into the door to get those experiences. Oh, and another thing, sorry, just popped into my head. A lot of companies, they do STEM events. So I know a lot of companies do women in engineering specific events, and I've been to them. So that's a great way to get involved. Probably more when you're doing A levels or just beginning university. That's who they offer the events to. But always keep an eye out. And there's also a great company called Bright Network who are great at organising those sort of internships.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we offer work experience sort of tasters, if you like, and obviously placements, summer placements once you've kind of done A levels. The problem we've got in our place is that you can't go out on the factory floor unless you're an adult. But certainly some of the more sort of office and lab based activities, we've had work experience from sort of 16 upwards. And you can get a taster into the type of work that we do. And then as you get a bit older, there's placement opportunities. So there's always lots of things to look at. But I think, as was mentioned in the earlier session, if you've got contacts in a local company that you're interested in, it's always worth just asking them whether they'd be prepared to let you come in for a week of work experience. Because often that's the way that these things get done rather than being necessarily advertised.
Yeah, I think you are right. I mean, my first work experience that I did, I was 17. I was actually on site on my 18th birthday, which wasn't too fun. But yeah, a lot of companies won't obviously let you if you're not an adult. But with my college, they paid for us to do our CSCS cards, which is like a health and safety card. But I mean, the project that I'm on now, we do take groups around our site, so it's not work experience per se, but it is to get students from high schools as well to go around and see. But honestly, I think one of the best things that you can do, especially if you're under 16, if you haven't started in college, is to utilize LinkedIn. So obviously you won't have any experience or anything to put on there, but it's a really good platform just to find out about companies. And a lot of companies host webinars and things, and you can say that you've been to these webinars, and then applying for the jobs in a couple of years' time, just show that you've had interest for quite a few years, which is really good. Kind of putting yourself above other chance companies, as we've said before. Even if you don't get anywhere, it's still worth asking them, because then obviously your name will be out there and they will remember that you are very keen. But yeah, you don't always necessarily have to be 18, like I said. I was 17 when I did mine. I think you do tend to have to be in college, but you don't always have to be an adult. And the work experience that I did, it was literally just a week. I was just following some engineers around on site, but it did really pay off because it's the company that I'm working for now. So yeah, it definitely is worth your while to reach out, because in my case, it did really, really pay off. So yeah, that's all the advice I've got, really.
Okay, so that was the last question I had. If there's any more, just put it in the chat.
I've got a question that I want to ask all the panelists. Um, so what inspired you to pursue engineering or to get into the role that you're currently in? Did you have any kind of role models or just anyone in general that inspired you at all?
I don't mind going if no one else is. I think for me, I didn't have a specific role model. It was just I wanted to be part of something big, if that makes sense, because civil engineering is about doing these massive big projects. I mean, the Trans-Pennine route upgrade that I'm working on now it's costing billions of pounds. It's been going on for years. It will be going on for years more, and it's just going to be a really fantastic upgrade for the north, because we don't have a lot of good rail systems up here. We got left out of the whole Medge Project's HS2 thing. But yeah, I just thought I've always wanted to be part of something really big, and it's just nice to be able to see something and say, I was a part of that. I helped to make that, especially when it is big projects like this that are going to benefit people in the country. So yeah, I think the main thing for me was just wanting to be part of something good, I suppose, and something quite big and impressive, which I've always liked. So yeah, no particular role model, just wanting to be a part of, I suppose, making great things like this.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to remember. I think, yeah, similar. I don't remember there being any kind of particular role model. Just always a fascination with how things are made, and wanting to be part of that. And I think manufacturing in general is a pretty fascinating sector. And when you think about, you know, how something gets from a rock in the ground to, you know, a tin can in your cupboard, or a car that you drive around, I just think that's a fascinating journey. So yeah, I think that was my inspiration, really, just this endless curiosity, or perhaps nosiness about how things are made.
I could go next. I would say for me, my role model was my dad. He is an engineer and he's amazing at it. And yeah, I always say like I think I'm privileged with the fact that I didn't have, some people be like, oh, as a woman, I never thought I could be an engineer. I never really thought of it as anything. I saw my dad doing it, I was like, I mean, why not? Like, and he was ecstatic. He has another engineer. So I would say I think so it's always a culture thing, my culture. You're either engineer, lawyer, or a doctor. There's nothing else for you. So glad that we connect with that, and it's made us closer. And I love to always argue with him about stuff and how I feel about it and his opinion on stuff. He doesn't believe in sustainability, so it's hard. But yeah, that was my experience.
I think for me, I did work experience in year 11. Went to BMW, so went to visit their plants like Hamshall, Oxford, just to see how the cars are made. And I was like, this is amazing. This is really cool. Like just getting a feel like the manufacturing floor, see what happens. But at a point, I kind of started discovering like what engineering is. I did some of those quizzes where it's like, oh, what career are you going to do in future? And just having a browse on, like, I think it was on UCAS, so you can see like the different courses. And you have like those sites where like you can see what courses you have to do for those jobs. So I started looking at that, where engineering came up quite a lot. And I was like, okay, this is really cool, it's what I enjoy. But there's so much in engineering, so I don't know what specialty I want to do. So that's why I was like just reading articles, seeing what there is. The IET, I had like some of those magazines as well to see what details are in there, like what kind of things like engineering is, what they get up to, and understanding how like electrification of like the railway lines, the cars are going into more like electrifying the cars. So do like learn about Tesla, how that started. That made me decide to discipline as well. So that's how I kind of got into it. It's just by like looking around and seeing what there is. Especially when I was like looking at university and then thinking about, okay, what career I want to do, and also what you really enjoy. So there's like so much out there you don't know till you kind of like have to do like work experience in it, or just like have a read of it. I find that really helped to determine like what I wanted to do.
And for me, I also didn't necessarily have a specific role model, but again, like everyone said, I just really enjoyed understanding how things worked. And I guess going a step further, I loved physics, I loved maths. It was a case of, well, how can we apply those sort of theoretical principles in practice? So I remember when I was doing, I can't remember if it was GCSEs or A levels now, but I was learning about pendulum motion in physics, and I went and built a pendulum motion clock just to see how it actually worked. So I've always had, I guess, an enjoyment with learning how things work, and taking it a step further, the satisfaction when you solve like a hard problem or find a solution where, there's been years where they've been trying to do this improvement and they haven't achieved it. I just really thrive for that feeling. And it's like an adrenaline rush. So I really enjoy that.
That's
Okay,
great.
so
Yeah, there's something in the chat.
yeah,
Someone's got a question.
what advice would you give when it comes to writing personal statements for getting on an engineering course to stand out?
And I'll start this one off. I think it's going beyond what you've studied. So everyone does the same sort of classes at high school. Maybe everyone's done some sort of engineering day. What have you done that's different? So like Mariam mentioned, did you do some sort of day where you went to visit BMW or some sort of engineering company. How have you gone that extra mile? So what have you done to take what you've learned at school and actually find out more about engineering or apply it in a way that not everyone else has? I think that's really critical.
Just to echo what Sumrine said there as well, it's like what you do in your spare time. So as you said, like you attend events and like maybe like little projects as well at home. So I remember my personal statement, they told me like not to mention about like a book you might have read or something, because don't forget these people have like probably read the same book and be reading books for like years. So it can get like quite in depth, but unless you're like very confident, go for it. But for me, I was like, oh, like if I just read a book and said, okay, I read this book, I really want to do this, it doesn't really link. You want to show like your passion, you want to show it from kind of like inside, just to say like this is what I really want to do. And how like I suppose people demonstrate, it's quite hard for a personal statement, right, when you're writing it up, to put like more like your personality into it and that you really want to do it. But if you kind of like show them that you're very proactive with like, I don't know, like building something on Arduino, Raspberry Pi, maybe like learning some like coding courses online. Like there's so much like free material out there you can get involved with. And a lot in like the STEM space as well, even like attend like Q&A panels, like getting really like involved and very active with it. I feel like they really appreciate that effort more, to say like you're very passionate about it, you really enjoy it, rather than okay, I like tick these boxes academically, but outside these are like the enrichment programs that I've done, this is what I really enjoy, and this is what makes you stand out. So I found like doing that, I like I did get all my offers as well. I didn't get called for an interview, I just got offers that way, that I kind of showed that I was quite proactive with it. So I think that's quite important, being proactive within that subject.
I would disagree with what everyone has said. Really, I would say if there's anything different I did. Same projects. I think I've done a project that was mostly what I based my personal statement on. But a little tip I would say is try and involve your community as well. So the project I'd done was actually something like an issue with my local community, and that's what I got my offers. I got offers through just my personal statement as well. So yeah, try and just see something in your community you can connect with. It shows empathy, shows, it shows. I feel like that just reads the definition of being an engineer, If you cannot solve your problems at home, I don't think you can solve anyone else's problems. So try and find a way to solve. If it's water, if it's that, in my community, there's this one building, the library, and like this is how we designed it and how I think it would function better. Those are really good things that you can talk about in your personal statement. And with that, you can also use to bring the personality into it, explain. I think in my one, I explained why I included certain stuff. And I believe it showed, my personality, and okay, I'm thinking like this because I'm this way. So yeah, I think it's very important.
It's
I think
30
one
years
thing
since I
to
wrote.
mention as well. Oh no.
So you
You
guys
wanna
can
go?
say this years since I wrote a personal statement, so I don't think I can really help with this one.
I mean, I was trying to see if I had mine saved somewhere, but I don't, unfortunately. But I think one thing that I did for mine, so I applied for quite a few unis as well, but obviously I didn't go because I got my apprenticeship. But I kept the same postal statement, just tweaked a few little bits. But one thing that I did mention was the work experience that I had done. I really did play on this because this was experience with the company that I was trying to get the apprenticeship for. But I mentioned before with one of the questions, one thing that you definitely should do is try and get work experience. And if you can't, then just do things like attending webinars, especially if it's things that are relevant to you, like Solis said. Say, for example, I don't know, your area has some issues with water, then try and find some webinars that focus on that. And then, because you don't want to just list all the webinars that you've been to in your personal statement, because it'll get way too cluttered. Just pick one or two examples that are, as you said, personal to you and that you can relate to yourself, because it just looks a lot better having a couple of things that you've done or attended that mean a lot to you, rather than saying, oh, I've been to 50 webinars this year. Because I think it gets to a point where it can look like you're trying to score points, I suppose. So yeah, definitely just get as much experience as you can.
either in terms of doing work experience or just webinars, even in-person seminars, that kind of thing, and then just pick a few that are really important to you or really stuck with you and mention those in your personal statement.
I also think include, I feel like you can also use what people would seem as a disadvantage to your advantage. So when I was applying to university, I was 16, and I used that a lot. I remember it being like, as a 16-year-old, something like that. Like, and I feel like 1000%, aside from the project, that was 1000% why I got in as well. So what you would deem as a disadvantage, or you'd be like, I don't want people to know this. You could use that to write a strong essay as to why you would be an engineer. And like I always feel to mention like I'm a 20-year-old engineer. So I feel like it's going me to places. Yes, I will lie sometimes about my age so that I'm taken more seriously, but it's really good to show that part of you as well. It's a bit more personal, and I feel like that's what they're looking for with personal statements and also with job applications.
Yeah, I think that was the last question. So I'll hand this back to Lauriann. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. Well, I really enjoyed this conversation and just having all the panelists on the call just talking about their backgrounds, their experiences, and in terms of answering all the questions. I think you've all did such an amazing job, like really going into detail, providing as much as advice as you can. And I think it's really helpful to have these panel Q&As. So, younger girls who are looking up to yourselves can aspire to one day hopefully be in the positions that you're in, or studying a STEM degree at university. So I think it's absolutely amazing. I'm just going to share my last and final slide, and just to kind of wrap up this session, which has been an amazing session. I just want to say thank you to all the panelists who have attended today's career panel. What you've spoke about has been very insightful. I've also found it amazing. So I hope the audience and all the attendees today have found this very insightful, whether you're already a professional and you get to hear about your peers in the industry, and also a student who is in high school at the moment, doing their subjects, whether you're doing your GCSEs right now, or maybe you might be in starting to consider what GCSEs you may take. Hopefully this can give you an influence into the right direction in terms of engineering as an option for you. So thank you to the panelists again. Thank you to our audience as well. Thank you to our host, Sanskriti. And if you do want to contact us or reach out to us, you can email us or check out our website as well. Again, this event has been organised on behalf of Lauriann STEM Club. We are a social enterprise that we are based in Bexley and operate in Bexley, catering to secondary schools and primary schools within the London Borough of Bexley, delivering STEM outreach and organising community events like this. And feel free to follow us on our social media channels. We're pretty much on most, so Instagram, Facebook. We have a YouTube page, and we most recently just joined LinkedIn. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, guys, and thank you all for attending today. Thank you so much. Take care. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.